Hey y'all, Tom, ND3N here, and thanks for dropping in for another Ham Shack chat. This time we're going to continue looking at the Yaesu FT-891 HF plus 50 all-mode radio. I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but this thing is built like a tank. This and its small size will make it a great radio for base, mobile, or remote operations. But the small size is also a negative, as there isn't a lot of room for easily accessible controls or displays. Many of these controls are buried in 18 different menu groups containing a total of 158 menu items. Well, maybe 155 depending on how you count, which control how your rig looks and works. Now we come into a bit of a conundrum, which I will euphemistically put in the cost-cutting category. Some others might say Yaesu went cheap. When you received your 891, it came with a basic owner's manual. However, to really get to know your rig, and especially the setups for different modes, you'll need to have the advanced manual. Fortunately, this is available on the Yaesu site by going to the products page, selecting HF transceivers and amplifiers, clicking on the FT-891. You'll then click on the Files tab and scroll down to Amateur Radio Manuals, HF satellite transceivers and amps, then click on the FT-891 Advanced Manual to download it. Now, while you're there, you might want to download the normal operating manual, which is a PDF version of what came with your rig. Then save both manuals someplace convenient on your computer so you can pull up either and use the search function, which is Control F, to quickly find information on any kind of operation you might want to do. With menu items, both manuals contain a chart that gives you the menu item name, selectable values, and the factory default. The advanced manual goes on to give a good listing for each individual menu item that includes what's in the chart and a description of what the menu item does. Additionally, the advanced manual goes through the modes, tells you how to set them up, and how those mode descriptions reflect back to the menu items. In order to save time in this video, I'll be presenting an abbreviated description of the menu items. Check out the video description for chapter listings. Each main section will be a separate chapter. This is so you can quickly get to the information you need without viewing or reviewing the entire video. Simply click on the timestamp and that's where the video will start. So if all you're looking for is how to do the FM mode, just go down there, find FM, click on the timestamp. As always, any comments,
Spock. Comment.
questions, concerns, or suggestions can be dropped off in the comments section below. So let's get to it. Starting with the menu items 1-01 through 1-03, define the automatic gain controls, or AGC. AGC fast, mid, and slow decays are mode dependent. When you're in the CW, FM, and data mode, your automatic gain control will use the fast setting. In RTTY, data lower sideband, and data USB, the mid setting is used, and in the LSB, USB, and AM modes, the slow setting is used. It's Yaesu's recommendation to use the default values of 300, 700, and 3000 milliseconds for fast, mid, and slow AGCs respectively, although each can be individually set anywhere from 20 to 4000 milliseconds. You can also force a change within a given mode using the function keys, and you can review how to do this on page 36 of the advanced manual. I'll also be doing a video sometime in the near future that will cover all of the function settings and selection. Menu items 2-01 through 2-07 change different aspects of your LCD display. LCD contrast sets the display contrast level. The range is 1 through 15 with a default of 8. And I haven't covered this yet, but in order to get into all of this, come down here to your multifunction knob and select whatever you've picked out here, and it'll highlight it. And then you spin the knob to change it where you want. So you can see that's a 15 and that's a 0. The default is 8, but I like mine a little darker, so I keep it on 10. And then to enter that, you click your multifunction display again, and it locks it in. Dimmer backlit sets the key LED brightness levels. And I'm going to turn off my light so we can see it. And I'm going to select this and show you what happens to my keys, which are the F, A, B, C, and the ones across the top. So let's spin those down, and you can see they go away to nothing. And I like mine really bright, so I keep it at a level of 15. The default is 8. Dimmer LCD sets the contrast of your display. The available values are 1 through 15 with a default of 8. So you can see the entire display darkens up or the entire display lightens up. Dimmer LCD sets the background contrast of the display, and the values are 1 through 15, so that's a 1, that's a 15, and the default is 8, and that's fine with me. Dimmer TX/busy sets the brightness level of the TX busy indicator, which is this blue light that's flashing occasionally. On transmit, it would flash red. The range is 1 through 15. So I turn this way down and you can just barely see that flashing. And I'm going to turn it up now, and you can see it's got very bright. And the default is 8, but I like to leave mine at a high brightness. Peak hold sets the time length that the max reading is shown on the S meter. So when you're up and you're reading your S meter and it's bouncing all over, it'll show the high point and then another caret where the high point was. So when the rest of the signal falls off, that high point will remain there. And it sets the time that it can be on. And the options are off, 0.5 seconds, 1 second, and 2 seconds. I like for my peak to show long enough for me to register it. So I leave mine in 2 seconds. And we'll get a closer look as I start going through all of the different mode videos that I'm going to be putting out. The Zen LED enables or disables the TX busy indicator, which again is this blue light that's flashing over here, or red when you're transmitting. The values are enable, which I've got it set to, or disable. And in disable, you'll see my flashing stopped. I like to be able to see the flash go, so we'll turn that back to enable where I like it and move on. The pop-up menu sets the position of the monitor function, in other words, how loud you want your monitor to be, with values of upper or lower, which defines where it's going to show up on your screen. Lower is the default, so everything will show up on the lower part of the screen when we're in the function menu, or the upper part, depending on where you've got that set up. Menu items 3-01 and 3-02 are respectively the DVS RX out level and the DVS TX out level. The range on both is 0 to 100 with a default of 50. DVS is used to pre-record up to 5 voice messages, and the specifics will be discussed in a future video. Menu items 401 through 411 define how your internal keyer works. Some settings are used for contest operations, and some are used for general setup, and some can be used for either or both. The keyer type defines the type of keyer used, And the options are off, bug, L key A, and that's electronic keyer, L key B, which is the default and what I prefer to use, L key Y, and ACS. You can go ahead and cycle through these, figure out which ones of these work for you or which ones are more toward your style. I'll just let you know right now, the big difference in the three L keys is what happens when you squeeze the paddles together. Keyer .dash reverses the connections of the CW paddle key. This is useful if you change the cable from your keyer to your rig and find the wiring to be reversed. It can happen, especially with aftermarket cables. It's also useful if you are right-handed and someone who is left-handed uses your rig, or vice versa. Somebody visits your station, or you're out on field day and using this radio and sharing it around. This is a quick fix to swap your dashes and dots. The options are normal, which is NOR, and reversed. CW weight determines the ratio between your dots and dashes, or as I prefer, your dits and das. When you hear me talk about it, I'll usually use dit or da, because dit is short and da is long. The books will tell you that the perfect ratio is that a da, or a dash, is 3 times the length of a dit, or 3 to 1. Thus, the default value is 3 with a range of 2.5 to 4.5. I like my DAs to be slightly longer, so I've got mine set to 3.2, but this is how you set it. You have the ability to enter up to 5 CW messages. More on that in just a bit. But you can also have your messages set to repeat at a specific interval. Beacon interval sets the time between repeats with the available options of off, then 1 through 240 seconds, and 270 to 690 seconds. The default is off. Number style is used in contesting. There are several different options for this, and I will address them in more detail during later videos. But this sets your cut numbers. And the purpose of cut numbers is to replace some integers with a letter to shorten an exchange. So generally, 9 will become N, 0 will become T, 1 will become E, and so on. For example, if using a signal report as part of the exchange, 599 would become 5NN. Often, in a contest, you will need to send a sequential serial number. So, contest number is used to automatically enter your QSO number. However, sometimes you'll find that you need to realign your numbers so that you can use this menu item to fix your sequence. The range is 0 through 9,999, and the default is 1. CW memory 1 through CW memory 5 are all identical. They work exactly the same, and each defines how each individual memory will be recorded. There are 2 methods. The first is text, which is the default, and uses the multifunction knob to enter the message that will be sent. The next method is message. And you'll see I have all of my selections for these memory channels set to message. When set to message, you're actually going to use your keyer to send your message. So you grab your key, send out CQ, DE, me, and this is my preferred method because I send faster than I can spin the multifunction knob. Another cool thing about this is if you don't send very fast, you can record at a slower speed, and then in the functions there's a setting for speed. So you can record at 8 words per minute, play back at 20. So people are going to think you're a lot better than you really are. By the way, the next video to be released will be about optimizing your CW transmit and receive settings, including menu settings and functions. I'll also show and demo recording and playback of the CW messages. Section 5 is our general setting, and they're going to be all over the place, but we're going to start with the noise blanking settings used in 5.1 through 5.3, and they are used to suppress both intermittent and periodic noise spikes caused by noise from your car's engine ignition system, above ground electrical wires, fluorescent lights, and natural random electrical disturbances. These three settings, width, rejection, and level, are used in conjunction with each other to blank out the noise. NB width sets the duration of the noise blanking pulse to match these noise sources with available settings of 1, 3, and 10 milliseconds. The default is 3 milliseconds. NB rejection selects the level of attenuation to 10, 30, or 50 decibels with a default of 30 dB. NB level has a range of 0 to 10, with the higher the setting, the higher the noise blanking level. The default level is 5. The beep level sets the beep volume when you press a button. Available values are 0 to 100 with a default of 30. RF/SQL VR selects the operation of the RF SQL knob, which is the outer knob right up here on top. The inner knob is the volume. The default is RF, and it's where I keep mine. If you're using FM mode, you may want to select the squelch option. Cat rate is the bit rate of both of the virtual COM ports that connect your rig to your computer using the USB cable and providing cat command inputs. The available settings are 4800, 9600, 19200, and 38400 bits per second, and the default is 4800. I have mine set at 9600. Cat tote sets the timeout timer for a cat command input. The default is 10 milliseconds, but that is generally too short for reliable cat. So I recommend bumping it up at least to 100 milliseconds. Additionally, you can also select 1000 and 3000 milliseconds. Cat RTS enables or disables the monitoring of the computer using the RTS signal. The default is Enable, which uses the RTS signal to monitor the computer, while selecting Disable turns off the monitoring function. Mem Group selects between Enable and the default value of Disable. Memory channels may be arranged into as many as 6 convenient groups for easy identification and selection. Now, I don't use this feature, but if it is something that's interesting to you, it's described on page 53 of the Advanced Manual. Enabling the FM setting menu sets the FM setting screen where you can define FM repeater settings such as repeater offset, plus or minus, CTCSS tones, and so on. The default is disabled. Rec setting is enabled while recording message as opposed to text CW messages into the 5 message channels we discussed previously. The default is disabled, and we'll cover it more in a future video. ATAS settings, when enabled, allows you to tune the ATAS 120A auto-active tuning antenna system manually, if you have one installed. The default is disabled. If you plan on operating split, where your transmit and receive signals are different between your A and B VFOs, you can set the quick split frequency to select the amount of frequency offset from -20 to +20 kilohertz. The default value is 5 kilohertz, and this will also be the subject of a future video. TX tote can be set from the default value of off and then 1 to 30 minutes in 1 minute increments. This menu item forces your rig to receive after continuous transmit of the selected time. Mic scan sets the resume method of how the mic scan works. The selections are enable or disable with the default of enable. With this item set to enable, pressing the up or down key on your mic will engage the scan. To stop, again, momentarily press the up or down key briefly, or click the push to talk switch to stop scanning and then transmit. When disabled, your rig will scan as long as the up or down keys are pressed and stop when those keys are released. Mic scan resume sets the scan resume in AM or FM mode. Your options are pause or time, which is the default. With pause selected, the scanner will stop when a signal is detected and hold until the signal disappears. With time selected, the scan will continue after 5 seconds, regardless if the signal remains or disappears. Your reference freak adjustment, or ref freak adjust, is used for troubleshooting and frequency calibration, and will tweak your transmit frequency to match a frequency counter or an over-the-air frequency source, such as WWV. CLAR Select determines the clarifier operations. The selections are RX, which changes only the receive frequency, TX, which changes only the transmit frequency, or TRX, which changes both transmit and receive frequency. The default and recommended setting is RX. APO selects the auto power off time, which turns off your radio after a set period of time. Values are off or 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, or 12 hours. Obviously, if you're doing something like whisper mode over a long period of time, you probably want to turn this off. Values are off or 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, or 12 hours. The default value is off. Fan control sets the cooling fan for 2 different conditions. The options are normal or contest. Now, you don't have to use it during a contest, but maybe you're operating outside in the summer and it's pretty warm, so you'd want to have that fan running more, then select contest. You can also set it to contest anytime you're operating with high duty cycle mode in higher power, such as ready. Starting with section 6, which is mode AM, and through section 11, which is mode SSB, and with the exception of section 9, which is mode FM, they all have very similar options. In particular, the high and low cut audio frequencies and high and low cut slopes. It's important to remember we are dealing with audio frequencies, or what your ears can hear. By the way, I hope you are enjoying this and learning from this video. Please take a moment to give me a like.
You like me. You really like me.
By popping that thumbs up icon. The AM L-cut or low cut frequency sets the low frequency cutoff audio filter in the AM mode. The default is off, and it can be set in 50 Hz increments from 100 to 1000 Hz. The AM low cut slope sets the slope of the low frequency audio to either 6 or 18 dB per octave, with the default at 6 dB. A slope of 6 dB per octave would be like walking down the side of a hill, and 18 dB would be like falling off a cliff. The AM high cut frequency sets the high frequency cutoff audio filter in the AM mode and operates the same as the low cut frequency, except of course it is on the upper end of the audio filter. AM high cut slope is also the same as the low cut slope, but on the upper side of the filter. For setting the frequency and slope for any mode, first determine what your band should be in that mode. Then set your L cut frequencies a little bit lower and your high cut frequencies a little bit higher. For example, I have my CW BFO set to 750 Hz, and my cutoff frequencies are set at 600 Hz on the low end and 900 Hz on the upper end. I could go tighter, but I like a little bit of flex space for tuning. For AM and SSB, I recommend using 100 to 3000 Hz for a wide band, 200 to 2800 Hz for a medium band, and 400 to 2600 for a narrowband. These are all just initial settings, and you should tweak them to your own preferences. AM Mic Select selects the input jack for the AM mode. The options are mic, where the audio input is through the mic jack on the front panel, which is actually behind this control panel, so you pop it and you'll find it right back in here. And this is the default setting. If you set it to rear, that disables the front mic jack and inputs your audio or data from the ready data jack on the rear panel. AM out level sets the level of the received AM signal output from the ready data jack. Available values are 0 to 100 with a default of 50. AM push-to-talk select determines the push-to-talk control for the AM transmit signal. There are three control methods. DACI, which is the default, controls the AM transmit signal from the ready data jack using pin 3. RTS uses the RTS signal from the USB virtual COM port, and DTR controls the PTT using the DTR signal from the USB virtual COM port. Section 7, Mode CW, has many similarities to Section 6, AM. Starting with the CW low cut frequency, selections are off, then 100 to 1050 Hz increments. The default is 250 Hz, and I recommend going 50 to 150 Hz below your BFO or side tone setting. By the way, side tone or BFO is adjusted in the functions and will be covered in a future video, but usually ranges from 700 to 900 Hz. I use 750. CW low cut slope selections are 6 or 18 dB per octave, and the default is 18 dB per octave and what I recommend for this setting. CW high cut frequencies selections are off, then 700 to 4000 Hz in 50 Hz increments. The default is 1200 Hz, and I recommend, again, going 50 to 150 Hz above your side tone setting. CW high cut slope has selections of 6 or 18 dB per octave, and the default is 18 dB per octave. And again, I recommend this setting. CW out level sets the level of the CW signal output from the ready data jack on the back of the rig. Values are 0 to 100 and the default is 50. Sometimes you may want to operate both SSB and CW on the same frequency. This can be during a contest where you get points for working the same station on both modes. And be sure to read the contest rules, as some don't allow this. But CW auto mode will allow this. The selections are off, which disables the CW keying while operating SSB and is the default. 50M that will enable CW keying while operating on the 50 MHz band only, and on, which allows CW keying while operating SSB on all TX, all bands. CW BFO sets the carrier injection sideband to USB, LSB, or auto, where the sideband is set to lower below 10 MHz and upper sideband above 10 MHz. The default is upper sideband, and we'll discuss this in a future video. But for now, just understand that while it can be useful for mitigating near-channel interference, in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter where you set it. CW break-in type determines if you'll use semi or full break-in. The default is semi, which keeps the transceiver in transmit mode for a set period of time after the key is released. Full break-in immediately returns the radio to receive mode after your key is released. The FT-891 uses mechanical relays for this function, so to preserve their lives, I would recommend using semi. The CW break-in delay sets your CW delay time when your rig is in semi break-in mode. Available settings are 30 to 30,000 milliseconds, with a default of 200 milliseconds, which is what I use. The rise and fall time of what I call the attack speed of your CW signal is defined in the CW wave shape menu item. Value selections are 2 and 4 milliseconds with a default of 4 milliseconds, which is what I use and recommend. The CW frequency display sets how your frequency is going to be displayed on your display. The selections are freak and pitch, which is the default. Frequency will display your dialed frequency without any offset added. The default setting, which is pitch, will display your frequency with the offset added or subtracted, depending on if you're using CW upper sideband or CW lower sideband. And this is my preferred method. PC keying sets the RTTY data jack for keying. Selections are pretty much the same as they were before. Off, which is the default, disables keying from the data PTT pin 3 of the jack. DACI enables the PTT of the jack. RTS and DTR control the transmit from the USB virtual COM port RTS or DTR signals respectively. QSK delay time sets the transmit delay between keying the rig and transmit. The default is 15 milliseconds, and you can also select 20, 25, or 30 milliseconds. This is useful when you're using a linear amplifier. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining because I really love doing this stuff, but I've put over 40 hours spread out over 6 days of work doing research, building the script, filming, editing, and posting these videos. That's an average of over 15 minutes per menu item spent on this video. If you've made it this far in the video and have watched a few of my others and found that my efforts have been generally reliable and saved you time in helping to put a new radio or a new mode on the air, or if my other videos have helped you choose a rig or improve your on-the-air skills, please consider subscribing.
I subscribe to Team V.
And ringing the notification bell. I certainly would appreciate it. Data mode selects the operating scheme in data mode. You can choose PSK or others, with the default value being PSK. A future video will discuss when to use which. PSK tone sets the PSK tone frequency between 1000, 1500, and 2000 Hertz. The default is 1000. Other display sets the displayed offset in data mode and can be set between plus or minus 3000 Hertz in 10 Hertz increments. The default is 0 offset. Other shift sets the carrier point in the data mode and, like the previous item, can be set between plus or minus 3000 Hertz in 10 Hertz increments with a default of 0. The L-cut and H-cut selections in data mode are nearly identical to the AM and CW sections. The data L-cut frequency selections are off, then 100 to 1000 in 50 Hertz increments. The default is 300 Hertz, and I recommend going 50 to 150 Hertz below the lowest range of your audio bandwidth in the data mode. Data L-cut slope selections are 6 or 18 dB per octave. The default is 18 dB per octave, and this is what I recommend for this setting. Data high-cut frequency selections are off, then 700 to 4000 Hertz in 50 Hertz increments. The default is 3000 Hertz, but I recommend going 50 to 150 Hertz above the highest range of your audio bandwidth in the data mode. The data high-cut slope selections are 6 or 18 dB per octave. The default is 18, and that's what I recommend for this setting. The data in select selects between mic and rear, which is the default. Mic inputs the signal from the mic jack on the front under the control panel. The rear inputs are from the RTTY data jack on the rear of the rig. The data PTT select sets the push-to-talk control during the sending and receiving of data. Selections, like before, are DAKY, RTS, and DTR. DAKY is the default, and everything operates just like we've told you before. The data out level can be set between 0 and 100 with a default of 50. Data BFO sets the data carrier beat frequency oscillator injection side for the data mode to either USB or LSB, which is the default. FM mic select sets which input jack you're going to use for the FM mode. You can select mic, which is the default and uses the microphone input on the front panel under the control panel, and rear disables the microphone circuit and inputs from the RTTY data jack on the rear panel. FM out level sets the level of the FM signal, receive signal output from the RTTY data jack, and can be set between 0 and 100 with a default of 50. Packet PTT select sets the push-to-talk control for the FM signal. Selections, again, are DACI, RTS, and DTR. RPT shift 28 MHz sets the repeater offset on the 28 MHz band. Selected offsets range from 0 to 100 Hz in 10 kHz steps. The default is 100 kHz. Repeater shift 50 MHz sets the repeater offset frequency on the 50 MHz band. Selected offsets range from 0 to 4000 kHz in 10 kHz steps with a default of 1000 kHz. DCS polarity selects the DCS or CTCSS tone polarity. When using the DCS function, the FT-891 can transmit the DCS code with the phase reverse. Options are the default TNRN with both transmit and receive in phase. TNRIV has the transmit in phase and the receive in reverse phase. TIVRN has the transmit in reverse and the receive in phase. And TIV-RIV has both transmit and receive in reverse phase. So here's another one where the L-cut and H-cut selections in RTTY mode are nearly identical to the AM, CW, and data section. The RTTY L-cut frequency selections are off, then 100 to 1050 Hz increments. The default is 300 Hz. The RTTY mark and space, or 1 and 0, are usually 2125 Hz and 2295 Hz. So I recommend setting the L-cut value to 50 or 100 below your mark frequency of 2125. Keep the slope at 18 dB. As noted before, the high end of your RTTY signal will be at 2295 Hz. So I would recommend setting the high cut value to 50 or 100 above that. The RTTY high cut slope, again, going to recommend you keep that at 18. RTTY shift port sets the shift input jack for RTTY. Selections are shift, RTS, and DTR. Shift, which is the default, inputs from the RTTY data jack pin 4. RTS and DTR control the transmit from the USB virtual COM ports, RTS or DTR signals respectively. RTTY polarity -R sets the shift direction for receiving in RTTY mode. The settings are normal, which is the default, where the space frequency will be lower than the mark. When selecting reverse, the mark frequency will be lower than the space. If you're receiving junk, try changing the setting, as a lot of what is received is dependent on the software used to interpret your tones. RTTY polarity T sets the shift direction for transmitting in RTTY mode. The settings are normal, which is the default, where the space frequency will be lower than the mark. And when selecting reverse, the mark frequency will be lower than the space. If you are not being replied to, try changing this setting, as a lot of what is dependent goes back to that software. The RTTY out level sets the level of the RTTY received signal output from the RTTY data jack. And again, it's between 0 and 100 for options with a default of 50. The RTTY shift frequency sets the shift width for RTTY mode. Now, if you subtract 2125 from 2295, you will get 170 Hz, which is the standard width for RTTY operators and is also our default. You can also select 200, 425, and 850 Hz. These are non-standard and rarely used. Now, you're not locked into using 2125 and 2295. The RTTY mark frequency sets the mark frequency for the RTTY mode. While the default of 2125 Hz is the standard used by most RTTY operators, you can also select 1275. Selecting 1275 instead of 2125 will still allow you to communicate with operators using the former, as they will have the same 170 Hz shift width. The RTTY BFO determines the carrier oscillator injection side for the RTTY mode. The default is LSB, but under certain circumstances and depending on your RTTY software, you may have to switch this to US. And for the last time, the L-cut and H-cut selections in SSB mode are nearly identical to the AM, CW, data, and RTTY sections, especially the AM. The SSB low-cut frequency selections are off, then 100 to 1000 in 50 Hz increments. The default is 100 Hz. For a wide band, use 100 Hz. For a medium band, use 200 Hz, and for a narrow band, use 300 or 400 Hz. The SSB low-cut slope has the selections of 6 or 18 with a default of 18 dB per octave, and this is what I recommend. SSB high-cut frequency selections are off, then 700 to 4000 Hz in 50 Hz increments. The default is 3000 Hz. For a wide band, use 3000 Hz. For a medium band, use 2900 or 2800 Hz, and for a narrow band, use 27 or 2600 Hz. For the SSB high-cut slope, the default is 18 dB per octave, and this is what I recommend. SSB mic select sets the microphone input jack for the SSB mode, and you can select mic, which is the default, and uses the microphone input on the front panel under the control panel. Rear disables the microphone circuit and inputs from the RTTY data jack on the rear panel. The SSB out level has available settings of 0 to 100 and a default of 50. The SSB BFO sets the carrier injection sideband to upper sideband, lower sideband, or auto. I strongly recommend you use auto, where the sideband is set to lower sideband below 10 MHz and upper sideband above 10 MHz. SSB PTT Select determines the push-to-talk control for the SSB transmit signal. There are 3 control methods which we've all seen before. DACI, which is the default, then RTS and DTR. The SSB TX BPF bandpass filter sets the frequency transmit bands. Note I said transmit for the SSB mode. If you recall from just a little bit ago, I gave you some recommendations for setting a wide band, a medium band, and a narrow band frequencies. This is where I got those from. Even though this is transmit and the L-cut and H-cut were receive, the selections down here you will see correlate with what I gave you up there. These selections are from the widest to the narrowest, 100 to 3000 Hz, 1000 to 2900, 200 to 2800, 300 to 2700, and the narrowest at 400 to 2600. And you want to go real narrow if you're on a crowded band, like working a rare DX or operating a contest. APF width sets the bandwidth of the audio peak filter to narrow, medium, or wide, and the default is medium. In CW mode, the APF peak center frequency is set according to the CW pitch frequency that you set in the functions and your chosen bandwidth. You want to set that for your operating comfort. The contour filter system gives a slight variation of the IF filter passband. The contour level adjusts the attenuation or gain of this variation from -40 to +20 with the default at -15. The contour width sets the bandwidth of the contour from 1 to 11 with a default of 10. Engaging the contour is done through the functions and will be covered in future videos. The IF notch width sets the attenuation bandwidth of the DSP IF notch on VFOA and is turned on or off in the functions. Again, this will be discussed further in a future video. Your selections are narrow and wide, which is the default. The SCP start cycle selects the sweep interval of the spectrum scope. The default is off, but you can also select 3, 5, or 10 seconds. The SCP span frequency selects the bandwidth of the spectrum scope sweep. The available settings are 37.5, 75, 150, 375, and 750 kilohertz, which is the default. Quick dial sets the tuning speed using the multifunction knob right over here to 50, 100, or 500, which is the default value. The SSB dial step sets the dial knob tuning speeds in the SSB mode to 2, 5, or 10 Hz, which is the default. The AM dial step sets the dial knob tuning speed in the AM mode to 10 or 100 Hz, and the default is 10. The SSB dial step sets the dial knob tuning speed in the SSB mode to 2, 5, or 10 Hz, which is the default, and we're talking about the main tuning knob. The AM dial step sets the dial knob tuning speed in the AM mode to 10 or 100 Hz. The default is 10 Hz. The FM dial step sets the dial knob tuning speed in the FM mode to 10 or 100 Hz, which is the default.
And now for something completely different.
Now we get to something a little unusual, and we will see it a couple more times in this video. If something just pops up and it doesn't identify a mode when you think it should, it is CW. The dial step sets the dial knob tuning speed in the CW mode to 2, 5, or 10 Hz. The default is 5 Hz. So again, note that when you see a group of mode settings lumped together and one doesn't have a mode mentioned, this is for the CW mode. The AM/CH step selects the tuning steps for the multifunction knob and the microphone up and down buttons in the AM mode. The FM channel step selects the tuning steps for the multifunction knob and the microphone's up and down buttons in the FM mode. The EQ1 frequency sets the frequency for the low range of the 3-band parametric microphone equalizer. The available values are off, which is the default, then 100 to 700 Hz. The EQ1 level sets the gain for the low range of the 3-band parametric equalizer from -20 to +10 with a default of 5, and the EQ1 bandwidth sets the width variation or Q for the low range of the 3-band parametric microphone equalizer from 1 to 10, with 10 being the default. The EQ2 frequency sets the frequency for the middle range of the 3-band parametric microphone equalizer, and the available values are off, which is the default, then 700 to 1500 Hz. The EQ2 level sets the gain, and the options are -20 to +10 with a default of 5. And the EQ2 bandwidth sets the width variation, and the options there are 1 to 10, with 10 being the default. EQ3 frequency sets the frequency for the high range of the 3-band parametric microphone equalizer with available values of off, which is the default, then 1500 to 3200 Hz. EQ3 level sets the gain with options from -20 to +10 with a default of 5, and EQ3 bandwidth sets the variation or Q with options from 1 to 10, with 10 being the default. The PEQ1 frequency is the exact same thing as EQ1 frequency, except you have your speech processor activated. Again, the available values are off, which is the default, then 100 to 700. The PEQ1 level sets the gain with the speech processor is activated from -20 to +10 with a default of 5. And the PEQ1 bandwidth sets the width variation or Q with the speech processor activated and available settings from 1 to 10, with 10 being the default. The PEQ2 frequency sets the frequency for the middle range of the 3-band parametric equalizer when the speech processor is activated. The available options are off, which is the default, then 700 to 1500 Hz. The PEQ2 level sets the gain with the speech processor activated, and your options are -20 to +10 with a default of 5. And the PEQ2 bandwidth sets the width variation or Q for the middle range when the speech processor is activated. Your options are 1 to 10, with 10 being the default. The PEQ3 is exactly the same as you've seen before, except you're using the speech processor. The available values are off, which is the default, then 1500 to 3200 Hz. The PEQ3 level sets the gain for the high range and the speech processor activated, and your options are from -20 to +10 with a default of 5. Now for the next few, you'll see that I've got all of these set to 5, the lowest power possible, and that is because I'm running it into a relatively small dummy load, and I don't want to burn it up. The HF SSB power sets the transmit RF power of the SSB mode on the HF band from 5 to 100 watts with the default of 100 watts. The HF AM power sets the transmit RF power of the AM mode on the HF band from 5 to 40 watts with the default of 25 watts. And we'll see if you've been paying attention. The HF power setting, with no mention of a specific mode, sets the transmit RF power output of the CW mode on the HF band from 5 to 100 watts with the default of 100 watts. The 50M SSB power sets the transmit RF power of the SSB mode on the 50 MHz band from 5 to 100 watts with a default of 100 watts. The 50M AM power sets the transmit RF power output of the AM mode on the 50 MHz band from 5 to 40 watts with a default of 25 watts. 50M power, again with no mode mentioned, sets the transmit RF power output of the CW mode on the 50 MHz band from 5 to 100 watts with the default of 100 watts. The SSB mic gain sets the microphone gain level for the SSB mode from 0 to 100 with a default of 30. The AM mic gain sets the microphone gain level for the AM mode from 0 to 100 with a default of 30. The FM mic gain sets the microphone gain level for the FM mode from 0 to 100 with a default of 30. The data mic gain sets the data input level from your TNC or your signal link to the AFSK modulator from 0 to 100 with a default of 50. The SSB data gain sets the level of the signal input when the SSB mic select, which we mentioned in section 11, is set to the rear. Values are 0 to 100 with a default of 50. The AM data gain sets the level of the signal input when the AMC mic selection in section 6 is set to rear. Values, again, are 0 to 100 with a default of 50. The FM data gain sets the level of the signal input when the FM mic select in section 9 is set to rear. Values 0 to 100 with a default of 50. And data gain, and yes, that's what it says, data gain sets the level of the signal input when the data in select in section 8 is set to the rear. Values are from 0 to 100 with a default of 50. The tuner select sets the function of the tune/LIN port on the rear of the rig. The default is off when you are not using an antenna tuner or linear amplifier. External is when you're using an external tuner such as the FC50, which I do use, the FC40, and several others. ATAS is used when using the auto-active tuning system, ATAS 120A, and LAMP is used with a linear amplifier. Vox Select selects the operating input for the Vox command to either the mic, using the input from the mic jack, and that is the default, or data using the rear panel ready data jack. Vox Gain sets the sensitivity of the Vox circuit. The higher the number, the more sensitive it is. The selectable range is 0 to 100 with a default of 50. Vox Delay sets recovery time before returning to receive mode from transmit. It may be set at 10 millisecond intervals between 30 and 3000 milliseconds with a default of 500 milliseconds. The anti-Vox gain sets the sensitivity of the anti-Vox trip circuit so sounds from the rig speakers do not accidentally engage the Vox circuitry. Selections are 0 to 100 with a default of 50. The data Vox gain sets the sensitivity of the Vox circuit when using data, such as PSK, RIDI, and so on. The higher the number, the more sensitive it is. The selectable range is 0 to 100 with a default of 50. The data Vox delay sets the recovery time before returning to receive mode from transmit when using data. It may be set at 10 millisecond intervals between 30 and 3000 milliseconds with a default of 100 milliseconds. The anti-DVox gain sets the sensitivity of the anti-Vox trip circuit so received data do not accidentally engage the Vox circuitry. Selections are 0 to 100 with a default of 0. The emergency freak is only used in and near Alaska. This enables transmit and receive on the Alaska emergency channel at 5167.5 kilohertz and may only be used for emergency purposes. The options are enable and disable, which is the default, and these are actually FCC regulations. So, probably best not to use it if you're not in Alaska. With reset selected, then pressing the button on the multifunction knob, it'll bring up the reset options. You then use the multifunction knob within a few seconds to select what type of reset you want to do. Then you press the button again to activate that reset. So there's your pop-up, and you see it goes away real fast. So we'll do pop-up, and I'm just going to turn it. This is what you get. You get all data and function. All is the full factory reset that will clear all set memories and put all menu items and functions to the original factory defaults. Selecting data clears the stored memory channels only, and function resets the menu items and programmable functions. That's what's in your A, B, and C buttons. This reset will put those items back to the original factory defaults, but will leave the programmed memories intact. And finally, the last three we have on the list are the latest software versions. These are not selectable, but just advisory. So my main version is version 1-10. My DSP version is version 2-05. And the LCD version is version 0101. And unless something's come out in the last couple days, these are the latest versions. If you need to check if a later version is available, dig down in the same place that I showed you at the beginning of the video where you downloaded your advanced manual. And there's a section there for software updates. And you can look it up there and see if there is, in fact, a software upgrade that you need to consider. Whew! There it is. 18 sections, 158 or 155 menu items. Thanks for sticking with it to the end. As I mentioned earlier, the next video will be about optimizing your CW settings, including receive and transmit menu items and function settings. I'll also show and demo several ways to pre-record and play messages. 73, and thanks for dropping in for a Ham Shack run-through of the FT-891 menu settings. As always, I am at your service. I'm Tom, ND3N, and I am out.